Hi, I'm Dan Olsen. We just wrapped up another Lean Product Meetup. Tonight's guest was Geoffrey Moore, author of the best-selling book, Crossing the Chasm. He's actually written 7 business tech books. This one is the most famous, of course. I'm sure you probably read it. This is the 3rd edition. He recapped top advice and frameworks from Crossing the Chasm and Inside the Tornado. And then he moved on to his newest book, Zone to Win. And this book really addresses more for established companies that are having trouble innovating. He has some really good advice on how big companies can innovate to succeed. So I hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please like it, subscribe to our channel, and sign up for notifications so that when we publish new videos from our next speakers, you'll be notified. Thanks a lot and enjoy the video. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Geoff Moore.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Let's see. Maybe it's there. So let me just go to this slide. So basically, high-tech products, introducing disruptive innovations to the rest of the world, that's kind of what keeps us all alive here in Silicon Valley, and that's what these books are about. Inside the Tornado was actually came out right after Crossing the Chasm, and those books are about, what are the external dynamics of a market as it encounters a disruptive innovation. I'm going to recap some of those frameworks, because the challenge you have is that as you introduce a disruptive innovation, the first group of customers that embrace it are very different from the next group, who are very different from the next group, who are very different from the next group. And so part of the job of a product manager is to orient the rest of the company to which of these 4 games that I'm going to go through are we playing now. And it means you have to orient the sales force, you have to orient the marketing force. You're not in charge, you can't direct them, but they're looking to you for orientation. So I think it's an important set of frameworks for you guys to have in place, and I'm going to go through that. Now, those books were written from the point of view of a startup. In other words, the idea of those books was you had one thing to worry about, and that was it. And so you weren't conflicted about where you were spending your time. The most recent book is about the same journey, going through the same issues of a technology adoption, but from inside a large established enterprise. It turns out, although it's the same journey, the dynamics are very, very different. Because a large enterprise, as you well know, is conflicted about where to put resources and how to allocate budget and so on. So I want to talk a little bit about that. How many people here, let me just get a sense of, if I had to say, do you work in a one-product kind of startup-oriented situation versus, how many people do it in that situation? I'm at a startup, we got one thing we're doing. How many people work at a large corporation where there are many things competing for budget? Okay, about 2/3 of the group. Okay, you're going to be kind of interested, thinking, hopefully in both, but in that second one in particular. So let's just kick this thing off with the first one. So this notion of the challenge this book was trying to address is the go-to-market, matching the go-to-market to the market adoption profile of the market at any given point in time is tricky. And then the fact is, if you're in EMEA and APAC and US, or you're in financial services and construction, they can also be in different states of adoption. And so the idea is to match your market development playbook to the state of adoption that it best characterizes your target market. So that's kind of the idea behind that. There are 3 frameworks that help. This technology adoption lifecycle framework, which I'll just recap with you briefly. And then this notion of 4 go-to-market playbooks. And when we go through them, I hope you'll be able to look at them and go, yeah, I've seen that one. We're not doing that one. Oh yeah, that's the one we're on, that kind of thing. That's what the playbook is designed to say, which of these 4 best represents what we should be doing right now. And that's what that's for. And then I'm going to tie that back to the sales motions that relate to each of the playbooks, and that'll be the first part of the talk. So this is the slide I've been milking for 30 years. I mean, let's be clear. But the idea behind this slide was, when you introduce disruptive innovation into any community, it will self-segregate into these 5 adoption strategies, going from the top to the bottom. So Sheldon at the top is a technology enthusiast, wants to get his hands on the product as soon as possible. Beta seems late. Alpha would be better, right? That kind of stuff. The visionary is somebody who says, I want to be the first major customer of this new technology. I want to use it to create first mover advantage. I'm going to change the world by using the technology. The pragmatists are saying, we're not. We have our own businesses to run. We'd like to use it when it works, but until it works, we just as soon have other people debug it, not us. The conservatives are going, oh God, not another please. And so they're saying, oh, we just now got used to the last one. You know, Windows 7, I was just getting there. Okay. Darn, okay, Windows 10. Okay. And then the skeptics who think you're all instruments of the devil, and so they don't even believe you. So each profile wants to engage differently is the idea behind that. And it ends up, that chasm comes from the fact that the first two groups, the technology enthusiasts and the visionaries, they're both predisposed to go toward you, to be the early adopters, we call them, of new technology. And they're characterized by, they will say to you, we believe what you believe. It's kind of what makes it fun to be in a startup, because your customers actually believe in what you're doing as much as you do. There aren't many of them, but they're in it with you, and they'll go the extra mile, and they'll help you debug your products, and they'll put some extra money in the kitty to see if that, you know, let's you know, we'd like to be part of your roadmap club. We'll try to, you know, help us get this thing going. And so at that point, you really don't have a product yet, because it's so new. And so the way you want to think about this is you're doing a project. Even though you're a product manager, even though you've promised to your funding institution that you will have a product that will sell in repeatable ways at scale, that's not where you are now. Where you are now is trying to get that first flagship customer. And by the way, this whole model is very B2B oriented. There's a B2C game plan that really, you can map it to this, but this is really B2B. So I just want to sort of, the prejudice of that is, I think I kind of realized that later in life, but it's important. So that's the project model, okay? And the idea behind this one is I want to get at least one flagship account, whether it's a Sam's Club, whether it's an American Express, whether it's a JP Morgan, whether it's a Visa, whoever it is, it's got to be somebody, oh, wow, you're the guys who are you're doing RFID at Walmart. Wow, that's pretty interesting, okay? It kind of puts you on the map. People don't know who your company is, but it puts your technology on the map. Oh, I guess this stuff is, oh, self-driving cars. Wow, who knew? You know, that kind of stuff, okay? The chasm is all about the pragmatists going, no, I'm not going to do this till I see other people doing it. So the pragmatists would come to a meetup like this and they go, so are you doing this yet? No? No? Okay, me neither. Good. Okay, good. And that's a good place for a pragmatist to be. It really is. And then at another meetup, they're going, you're not doing that, are you? You are? you too? Oh, shit. Okay. So what a pragmatist is doing is they're playing a herd strategy, right? Darwin has proven this works very well, right? Stay with the herd. And so the chasm is the herd's not going, I'm not going. And the tornado, which we're going to see in a minute, that's when everybody stampedes. But in between, you have this chasm problem then, is how do you get the first pragmatist to how do you get the junior high dance started? You know, if boys are on one side of the room and girls are on this, how do you get it started? And what we realized is there are niche markets in the pragmatist domain where we call them pragmatists in pain. So these are pragmatists who have a business process that's broken. Maybe because, you know, we've gone from a product model to a subscription model. Maybe, all of a sudden we're going from, a license to a SaaS thing. And all of a sudden it's like, man, our customer support thing we need this customer success thing, I think. We need something. This isn't working anymore. And so a pragmatist in pain is willing to embrace a new technology solution. First of all, if they've tried all the conventional stuff and they've confirmed that doesn't work. So that's the pain state, okay? And so now they're willing to entertain a new tech solution, but only if it's truly committed to solving their problem. They're not willing to experiment. They don't want any agile, fast failure, iterate, MVP, none of that stuff. No, I need a drug that cures my disease, kind of thing. So these people do not say, we believe what you believe. What they say is, we need what you have. But you have to have it. This is where we had something we called the whole product. The whole product was your product or service plus everything else I would need in order to take this problem off my plate. And the promise you make to cross the chasm is you pick a target market, you pick one use case, typically in one industry, and you say, we're taking that one off the table. Whatever it takes to take that problem off the table, we're committed. If we have it in our product, we'll put it in our product. If we need a service partner, we'll go get the service partner. If we need to interface with somebody else's technology, we'll interface. Whatever it takes, because we want to be the go-to solution for that use case. And it's typically something of a corner. It's not a corner case so much, but it's not a mainstream case, because if it was a mainstream case, the big guys would already be working it. So it's got to be a little bit marginalized, so the customer's marginalized, and that's the entry point you get. Okay? So this is not a project model anymore. This is now a solution model. But it's not solution like mayonnaise. It's solution like, it's a very, very specific remedy for a very, very specific malady. And your sales force has to understand how to diagnose that, and you qualify it during your marketing process, and your development roadmap prioritizes anything that solution needs above everything else, and that's how you play that game. And what happens is, and the reason you want to be in a single vertical industry is you solve that problem once, God bless you. You solve it twice, that's interesting. You solve it 3 or 4, and that's like, holy smoke, there's a cure for cancer. In other words, and this is what it is, and then you become the cure, right? And that means you get to beat any other vendor in the world. Google, Amazon, Microsoft, say, I don't care who it is. No, it's you, because you, for this particular condition, have the fix. That's when you do that, you now have a repeatable use case that actually generates predictable, forecastable sales momentum. And in fact, the segment starts coming to you. One of the ways you know this strategy is working is you start getting people inbound saying, I think I need your drug. Okay, I think this is something I've heard about. Would you please call on me, or would you please have a salesman call? So it's a very different experience than anything you've had prior to that as a startup, when you used to call people and have to spell the name of your company, right, because they've never heard of anything about you. It's great. By the way, that use case is not a very big market. Typically, it's a great way to get from 1 million to 10 million, which is an important journey for a startup. If you get to related use cases, 20 million, 30 million. If you kind of go into adjacent things, you can get to 100 million. There's no way you're going to get to 1 billion. Okay? And at some point between 100 and 200 million, the bowling alley starts to feel a little cramped. Feels like, but by the way, $200 million, I mean, that's not too bad, right? So, okay, that's pretty good. But by the way, to a big company, it's not. One of the problems we're going to have in Zone to Win is $200 million, which is huge to a startup, is a rounding error to a large public company. And therefore, you can't get the attention and the devotion. And that's why you get to beat the large company, because they won't devote the resources to the problem, because from their point of view, it's a suboptimal return. Where they're going, and where you're headed, ideally, particularly if you took venture capital, is into this thing we call the tornado. And the tornado is the one where it's, you are, oh my gosh, I have to too. So now the pragmatist herd is stampeding, right? And now it's a huge market share land grab. Everybody is going to have Wi-Fi. Everybody's going to go to the cloud. Everybody's going to have a mobile app. Everybody. And so now it becomes a huge land grab. And the customer, these are pragmatists as a herd. We're no longer doing vertical markets. This is not target market. This is now relatively horizontal, relatively broad adoption. And these customers do not say, we believe what you believe. And they don't even say, we need what you have. What they say is, we want what they have. Okay? It's just high school, right? We want what they have. I want whatever the cool kids are wearing. I personally was never a cool kid, but I saw what they wore. So we want what they have. So that's not a solution model. It's an infrastructure model. It's basically a standard offer model, whether it's a product or infrastructure. Basically, it's like, I want 5G. Okay, 5G is going to be a tornado, right? That's what I'm going to want going forward. And that's what creates these massive growth rates in tech. With it's a one-time, what they call a secular change in the market, where people go from not using it to using it, and in very large ways. And that's where you get these incredible valuations in tech. It's also why tech is so frothy, because when people see that incredible growth rate, the way they project it is it goes on forever. Well, guess what? It's about 5 to 6 years, not forever. And at some point it starts to flatten, and then it's like, oh my God, the sky's falling, and we have to revalue everybody in the marketplace. But this is where the incredible valuations come from. It's kind of where the fortunes get made going forward. Having said that, we're still at the beginning of the market. If this is probably, we're now might be in the tornado, we're some years into the market, it depends on how long it took, but let's say we're at year, 10. This could be a 25-year category, but from now on, we're going to be, after the initial tornado, we're no longer going to see those growth rates. Now what we're going to start seeing is moving from what they call secular growth, meaning one time, to cyclical growth. So, now we're going to start seeing, you're going to buy, there's a Windows refresh laptop thing that's going to happen this year. Okay, that's, it hasn't gone away, but let's face it, it's also not a meteoric rise. And this is when the conservatives come into the game. Now, in the product era that I grew up in, conservatives were never a very interesting market because our products never really were designed for conservatives. I mean, they got cheaper, which they liked, but they never got, the user experience went from sucks to sucks a little less. And that was the highest bar we ever hit. So what's happened with the service economy and the cloud and the whole SaaS model is, hey, these people will, if you can't keep your install base, it's going to churn out. Well, your install base increasingly is the conservative element in your market world. It's the people that want to stay with you. That's a conservative idea as opposed to switching to the new guy. So this conservative part becomes incredibly important. The conservative does not say we believe what you believe, because they certainly do not. They do not say we need what you have. They would be perfectly happy never to have met you. They do not say we want what they have, because they do not. They say, I guess we need what they have. In other words, I can no longer be compliant with the expectations of our marketplace unless I get, a website. Okay, all right, okay. Unless I do something in social media. It is called social media. Yeah, I think so. Okay, I'll get some social media person. And what they want is a managed service. So this is where all of the managed service opportunity comes from going forward. And the user experience becomes very important here. And user experience here doesn't mean delightful. User experience means not completely confusing. Okay, so that's which by the way, we did not achieve with the product model, but we're getting better and better at doing it. So my point about that is that this is 4 different states. Each state has a kind of a constituency that you want to serve during that state. The interests of those constituencies are each different. And I don't mean like slightly different. I mean radically different. So and by the way, at any given time, there's always customers in all 4 states. It's not like the world says, oh, today I'm going across the chasm into the bowling alley. It's like, no, it's not. But the question is, as an organization, in order to be coherent in your go-to-market, you have to say, we're going to pick one of those 4 as our design center. That's the game we're going to play in 2020. So the answer that you owe your company for your product this year is, which of these 4 game plans are we going to play? And it's really basically your call. Now you can't dictate it, but as the product manager, you own this problem. This is your problem, and you have to give your company the very best answer you can. And you can't waffle. Well, it's sort of tornado Main Street with a little early market. No. Pick one. Pick one and play that game well. And get the idea that you're not going to win every single game, because not everybody is going to be in that game. So what I want to do now, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but this is the slide set will be available. Each one of those 4 states has a playbook. And we built the playbook around this checklist on the left. The checklist doesn't change. The checklist says for any market playbook, who's the target customer and what's the compelling reason to buy? That's sort of what's the demand? And then what's the whole product and who are the partners and allies? Okay, how do you fulfill that demand? What's the solution? If they have a problem, what's the solution? Okay, and then distribution and pricing, how are we getting it to market? What's our strategy for that? And competition and positioning, okay, who are the other alternatives and where do we fit and why are we going to win? And if I win this segment or target segment, where am I going next? Next target customer. So in the early market, this is the visionary one, I'm just kind of recapping. It's a project model, remember? We're doing a project. It's a direct sales model. You cannot have other people sell your stuff at this stage because your stuff doesn't exist. I mean, it exists in your mind, and you have people working on it, but it's not anything you could train somebody else on yet. It's not solid yet. So it's got to be sold directly. And it's basically about technology-based leadership. This is a time when you're saying, this is when you have the 10x effect. If there's something you can do that's sort of magic. You have magic beans. You're like Jack and the Beanstalk. This is what we're doing. And the people who believe what you believe are the only people who would play this game with you. So there are not many of them. Okay? The second playbook is that bowling alley playbook. Remember, this is the pragmatist in pain playbook. This is the solution model. So the key thing here is, you know, do we have people in the problem state that we are going after? You have to do really strong qualification during the bowling alley phase. You do not want to waste time with people that kind of have a sort of problem. You need people that have a desperate problem. You need people to come toward you saying, no, I want to be part of your clinical trial because I have this disease. It's direct sales at the beginning. Interestingly, as you get into these things and you become the go-to solution and everybody realizes, oh, desktop publishing, yeah, you use a Macintosh. You don't use a PC. Oh, okay. So once that happens, now you can start going from direct selling to indirect selling, because all the people that wanted to sell the Macintosh and sell the Adobe PostScript and sell the, you know, and the laser printer from HP and the Aldus Persuade, I mean, anybody who wants to kind of put together the whole kit, they want to sell this too. And so in a niche market, after you get the fire burning, you can actually turn it over to indirect distribution, and that works. And it's very much about being the winner in the segment. So the key idea to this thing is something we call fish to pond ratio. You need to be the biggest fish in the pond. So therefore, you have to do math. Fish to pond math is very simple. Are you a $10 million company and you're going to get 60% of your business from this niche, $6 million? How big can the pond be? Well, it can maybe be 15 million. You'd be a 40% share. If it's much bigger than that, if it's a $50 million thing and you have $6 million, you're not the go-to solution. You see what I mean? So it's really important that you play the fish to pond ratio game in the bowling alley. And it typically requires very focused distribution, not a natural sales. Most salespeople like to sell in the tornado. They like to sell anything to anybody. That's not what this is about. On the other hand, this is what this is about. The tornado is the land grab. This is when you have a standard offer. This is when people are switching from 4G to 5G, or they're switching, you know, they're going to the new thing, and they want to get the latest new thing. They want to get an electric vehicle, and then the question is, well, which one should I get? Should I get a Tesla? Should I get a Volt? What should I get going forward? And you're trying to grab as much share as you can during this period. This is a seller's market, and it's the only time it's a seller's market. It's all about getting market share leadership. And the reason why market share leadership is so important is an ecosystem starts forming around this new technology category. So the ecosystem partners say, well, who do I work with first? Well, I work with the market share leader. Why? Because they have the most customers that I can make a living in. So the market share leader becomes incredibly powerful, not because they're a powerful company, although increasingly that's what, but because everybody wants to be on their platform. So then the quality of the whole product that they have is actually higher because more people are trying to make it better all the time, whereas somebody who has a good product, maybe even a technically superior product, but with fewer partners, not as successful in the marketplace. I'm spending a bunch of time with Salesforce in the last 5 years. 5 years ago, Salesforce was not the market leader. Siebel was still the market leader. In the last 5 years, it's switched. And all of the partners who had Siebel practices, now I say, no, we have a Salesforce practice, which gives Salesforce an enormous amount of power right now, because now everybody wants to be on their bandwagon. So this is why these fortunes get made, but most of the money goes to the number one player. Apple takes most of the money out of the pie. Microsoft took most of the money out of the pie. That kind of stuff. You know, NVIDIA is going to take most of the money out of that pie, et cetera, going forward. And then the fourth one is this Main Street game, where we're saying, okay, look, either maybe we are really a 20th century leader who's revamped our product to be more cloud-ish, but the truth is we were kind of client-server, you know, but we have a huge install base. So if that install base, remember this install base doesn't want to switch vendors if you can kind of keep up. If you can, as long as you can kind of modernize enough, they're going to go, you know what, this is better than getting remarried, okay? A little counseling is better than remarriage, okay? So therefore, yeah, well, okay. Their opinions may differ on this, but anyway, a managed service model and better experience for end users. So my point is, again, those are, you can see those are 4 very different playbooks. And so if you don't pick one, if you say, well, you know, deal your own in your territory and by account, your support thing is crazy. You don't know how to prioritize your roadmaps. If you have some bug list, you don't know whose interest to put ahead of whose interests. If somebody's saying you got to be agile and fast forward, and somebody else is saying no, you just have to actually finish a product around here. I mean, you get all these different conflicting inputs, and so your job, that's why your job is going to be, okay, the best bet for our company with this product in this year is playbook X. That's your job to pick the playbook. Okay. And when you take that playbook and put it to sales, this is the last slide I'll do it with this set of icons. These 4 models have, the way it shows up in going to market is in the early market, there's no budget for your thing. So one of the challenges your sales and marketing force has is we have to create budget. So you have to do this kind of thought leadership Marcom, which is saying, look, digitally transforming, the world's changing. If you don't get on board, you're going to blah, 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 you know, that kind of stuff. And again, most people will go, meh, 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 meh. But the people who believe what you believe will say, you know, they're right. We really have to do this. And it's a very executive sales thing, very target account coverage. There's a handful of people, it's kind of like concierge service, and you want to spend time with relatively large customers. You can't afford to do this with little customers. So it's kind of important to take on big brand, what we call flagship customers for that motion. The next motion, and yeah, the result is you get a flagship showcase. The next motion in the bowling alley, there's actually budget, but there's not budget for you. There's budget for the crappy way of addressing the problem, the old-fashioned conventional way. And what you want them to do is to say, you know, if you took that budget and you spent it on us, A, we'd solve the problem, and B, you wouldn't have to keep spending that budget over a year after year after year, abandoning it. So it's a redirect budget problem, very much use case centric. So it's very specific. This is the budget we're talking about. This is the problem we're talking about that you're not solving. It's a consultative sort of diagnostic kind of sell. It's very segment-focused coverage, and this is where we get the ability to penetrate the mainstream market. This is a great way at any time to get into a new geography, into a new vertical, into a new whatever. Pick the pragmatists in pain who are marginalized by the current solution and over-deliver to them going forward. The budget happens in the tornado. That's when companies start saying, okay, we got to move to the new infrastructure. I guess we better create a big budget for it. This is when the IT people actually get budget. Prior to the tornado, the IT people do not have the budget. The business line of business can make the budget or create the budget or redirect it, but the IT people can't. So prior to the tornado, you cannot target the IT people because they don't have the budget. Okay? But once you're in the tornado, they do. And now what we want to do is do the classic. This is where the classic old-fashioned, product market checklist, where you have your competitive matrix, and by some miracle you got all the pluses and the other guys didn't. I mean, it was amazing, right? Right? That's what's going on in the tornado. It's very transactional, and this is when this is the land and expand, and let's get going. In fact, arguably, the penetrate is the land. And this is kind of more of the expand kind of going forward. And then finally, on the managed service side, these conservatives are saying, look, I have an OpEx budget. I'm not interested in buying anything new. But if you want to keep my OpEx budget, if you don't want me to churn out or swap out or whatever, here's what you got to do. You got to make a much better experience for me every year. Self-service transactions, digital coverage. Take the friction out of things going forward. And that's kind of a renewal motion. So again, just 4 go-to-market motions. Each one is familiar to you. I haven't put up anything here you're going, oh, I never thought of that. You've thought of all of this. But you can see that in any given year, which one you're going to prioritize is really, really important. Because each one of those makes very different demands on the company. Okay? So that's sort of the first, that was sort of the crossing the chasm, inside the tornado recap. And that's the journey we're on, whether we're in a startup or whether we're in a large company. But for that raft of hands that went up that says we're in a larger company, there's an additional dimension of the journey, which is what this book's about, which is, now, okay, we got the journey. I think I know how to play this game. Let's go play the game. And the issue is, well, hang on. You want to start something in the early market, or you want to cross the chasm, but we have this, I was with HP Inc. yesterday. We have this little printer business. It's $30 billion, people. I know the printers are dead. It's $30 billion, okay? So dead, what do you mean by dead, okay? Redefine death, right? That's a lot of money. Right? There's a lot of profit there. So you start getting these arguments of, okay, I have these sort of legacy products. And yeah, I get they're not sexy and they're not growing. So you start worrying about what they call operating leverage, which says I'm going to grow profits faster than revenue, okay? So if revenue's flat, I will still grow profits. If revenue's declining, I will still grow profits, okay? This is what PE firms love to do. Okay? So the people want to capitalize on the current wave. At the same time, you kind of get, oh, by the way, if we don't do anything about this new wave, it crashes on our house and sort of takes it away. So maybe we should also pay attention to the new wave, maybe try to ride it. And now the issue is, okay, but now who gets what budget? Who gets, and by the way, it's not just money. Who gets share of Salesforce? Who gets share of the marketing dollars? Who gets share of Mind? How do we prioritize things around here? Who gets to recruit the next batch of talent, et cetera, et cetera? And so it creates what actually Mark Benioff taught me that phrase, a crisis of prioritization. And it's a very challenging crisis, as you'll see in just a second. And then this zone management framework is something that I think will help. You are not, if you're part of a product management function, you're not empowered to do the enterprise rezoning. That's something for people outside the room, but you need to know about it. And because this is how it's going to get done in your company, and if you can advocate for it, it will help. But this really is, this book is for an executive team saying, we want to change the dynamic inside our company so that we can innovate and still support our core business. That's what that is the request. We need to support our core business and we need to innovate, and how do we manage that going together? So just this crisis of prioritization, just to kind of recap it. So we're talking about, you guys have been very kind. Oh, I knew Jeff was back in. So I've been at this for a while, okay? So if you start reading this list from the bottom and just sort of read up instead of down, so when you get to the row where you don't recognize any of the names, that's kind of when you came into the industry, okay? There might be a few people in this room that go, I go all the way to the top, okay? That's called old, okay? This is very old, okay? But there's one thing that all these names have in common. These were not the losers, these were the winners. These people crushed it the first time. They won. And yet, all 56 of them couldn't catch the next wave. And none of them exist in anything like the form that they existed in their heyday. They're not here. So you say, well, 56, that's a pretty large number. Maybe they were the dumb ones. It's like, no, they were not the dumb ones. No. These were our best. These were the best and brightest. They went to GSB, or they went to Harvard, or they went to MIT. Yeah, the same guys. So there's something wrong with the playbook, right? When you have that many failures, it's like God is trying to give you a message and you're not listening, okay? So the idea was, could you decode what the hell was going on? Why? And this was the innovator's dilemma, which Clay wrote about, but the innovator's solution didn't solve it, because if it did, he had solved it, I wouldn't have to write the book. So it's a problem, okay? So here's where the problem comes from. You come to the annual budgeting process, this crisis of prioritization, you say, we have a limited amount of money. There's a lot of people who are bringing it to the budgeting process saying, you should fund my initiative. You should fund my product. You should fund my organization. You should fund me, okay? And so when you do that, you say, well, great, you want some money. What kind of a return on investment are you going to give me? I mean, come on, make the case, right? And what McKinsey guys taught us to do is say, and by the way, in what time interval, okay? So this is called the 3 horizons model. The first horizon is, I'll give you money this year, you'll give me a profit the same year, okay? That's horizon 1. Horizon 2 is, you get funded this year, you're not gonna make anything. In 2 to 3 years, that's when I'm gonna get my return. And the third one is, 3 to 6 to 9, who the hell knows, okay? Let's get that one, okay? So obviously the 56 companies, when it came to funding something that had an ROI in this year, not a problem. These people were professionals. They got it. This is what you learn to do in an MBA. I can do this. And they did it well. And they made their numbers. Year after year, they were making their numbers, okay, which is important. What we thought was they didn't know how to innovate. You know, they're just kind of dumb. So anyway, so Horizon 3 is the problem, right? Only bright young startups know how to innovate. That turns out to be not true, okay? These people did know how to innovate. And the reason why is they could fund it, and the reason they could fund it is it wasn't that much money. If you're a $13 billion company and you have a $100 million research lab, that's a lot of money. It's a hell of a lot more money you're going to get from a VC. But you know what? It's not a big deal. And by the way, I'm not using my sales force. I'm not using my marketing force. I'm not asking my professional services people to redirect. I can do this. You know, remember, Apple did not invent the Macintosh. Xerox invented the Macintosh. The problem was Xerox couldn't capitalize on the Macintosh because of the Horizon 2 problem. The Horizon 2 problem is, hey, we found something in the, this is great. It's this thing called GUI. No, it's spelled with a U. GUI, G-U-I, GUI. Okay, well, yeah, you move this potato around and this thing moves on the screen. It's really magic. Okay, so GUI user interface, cool. So we want to take it to market. Great. So I want you to fund me this year. I need this much money, and I'm not giving any of it back. Okay. What about next year? Next year I'm going to need a lot more money because we're going to really take it to scale. I'm not giving any of that back either, by the way. In the third year, if you give me this much money, I think I can break even. What do you say? Okay. And the answer was, thank you for playing. So this is where we couldn't do it. And so we said, look, this Horizon 2 challenge happened over and over and over again. And so the takeaway was, look, guys, if you're going to catch an S-curve, if you're going to catch one of these tornado curves, you got to go through a J-curve. Okay? So I mean, that's the game. And the question really is, who's up for that? Okay? Well, you know, it's a mixed bag. So you look at this and you say, are venture capitalists up for this? Of course they are. That is the venture capital model. The whole industry is based on the J-curve. Everybody in that industry has put money into J-curves. The limited partners give the money to the general partners, and the general partners give it to you guys. And it's a J-curve. And everybody knows you got to get through the red part to get to the blue part to pay off. That's the game. Okay? But we're all organized around it. And the reason it works is because in the venture model, I get 25 shots on goal, and if I get 3, I win the game. Right? So it's like hockey. If you're a public market, you don't have that kind of funding, and B, you don't get 25 shots on goal. You get 1 or 2. And therefore, the failure rate is terrifying, and therefore it's a crappy bet, and public market investors say, don't do this. Well, that kind of sucks, right? It's like, okay, so big wave coming, can't do anything about it. So that's challenge number 1. Your customer base, the early adopters are saying, yeah, let's get on the new thing, but the pragmatists are going, wait until, I mean, like, you've got, first of all, you haven't really finished all the things you promised me on the thing we have today. And by the way, you know, don't rush things. The challengers in your ecosystem are going, maybe we should jump on the new bandwagon because this could be our way to jump to the top. But the incumbents, the Accentures and the PwCs and the Deloittes and all the big guys are going, well, remember, they stayed on Siebel a very long time before they switched to Salesforce, right? And that wasn't an accident, right? That wasn't because they were dumb. That was because that's where the trough they were feeding at was still being filled up, right? So they're saying no. And then startup sales teams are going, this is cool, I love selling this thing. But established sales teams, I want to go to club, right? I love going to club. Nobody ever got to club in a J-curve, okay? I want to go to club. So they demo the J-curve model, and then they sell the old stuff. And so you have this sort of very dysfunctional thing. So the point about this exercise is, this is why the startups could outperform the very best companies on that list, the very best, because they weren't conflicted. There's a lot of problems of being in a startup, and it's not easy, but you don't have these. This problem you do not have. You live in an ecosystem that is completely supportive of your strategy, and it's still the percentage chance. It's not great, but everybody's playing the same game going forward. In this one, you're conflicted. And so that led to this notion of zone management. There's only 2 more slides here. So the zone management thing said, okay, look, how would you prosecute this problem in an open, transparent, thoughtful way? And being a consultant, you will always come up with a 2x2 matrix, because that's the solution to all known problems, and including this one. So basically what it said, and people kind of got this. First of all, you say, look, can we get that managing the core business, where we do sustaining innovation, is going to require a bunch of processes and procedures and rules and metrics and whatever that are going to be pretty damn different from the disruptive innovation, novel business. And everybody goes, yeah, we got that. So they need to be in a separate building, whatever. Okay, fine. I don't think we were as clear about the other dimension, which is, does it make enough revenue to make be visible to our investors as well as to the rest of our stakeholders? And if it does, then it gets above the line. And if it doesn't, whether it's a cost center or just an early not revenue producing or not producing meaningful revenue, it goes below the line. And with that framework, we could actually create 4 zones. And the point of these zones is that each zone has a different playbook, and that playbook is designed for that zone, and it creates failure in the other 3 zones. And what those 56 companies were doing at the end of the day was using the performance zone playbook in all 4 zones. And you can't. You can, but that's how you get on the list. If you want to be the 57th company on the list, that's how you do it, okay? So notice the 2 horizon ones are on the right. We're dividing it up between the product people and the sales people who jointly own the revenue number. Basically, if you have a number in your sales plan or in your comp plan, a revenue number, you're in the performance zone. That's your job. In addition, it's not just money though, because this is the zone that actually delivers your value to the world. This is how you have an impact on your customers, through the performance zone. That's where they give you money, but that's where you give them value. And so it's sort of, in that sense, it is right that the performance zone playbook kind of took pride of precedence, because the whole point of your company is to perform in the world. And this is the zone that's the point of the spear for doing that, which is great. Okay. Now, that zone doesn't work without a significant amount of support resources. This is like an army that has, for every soldier in the field, there are 9 people, in the support chain going forward. That's what the productivity zone is about. It's everything else in your company that doesn't have a number in your comp plan. That, by the way, might include you. Okay. It's all of finance for sure. It's all of IT, it's all of HR, it's all of legal, it's all of facilities, it's all of cybersecurity. It's also all of marketing, customer support, customer success. Anything you don't charge the customer for directly, it's probably in the productivity zone. Okay? And the productivity zone is organized functionally. It's organized around IT, legal, whatever. The performance zone, there's a sales versus product thing, but it's organized around getting money from the product from the world. It's a very competitive world. Up in the upper right-hand quadrant, it's a much more process-oriented world in the lower. So there's a very strong process orientation in the productivity zone. We try to measure twice, cut once kind of thing. We try to do things right. As you'll see on the next slide, think slow, don't think fast, think slow. And the upper ones, no, think fast. Because, by the way, we have to make the quarter. Okay? By the way, if you're at Salesforce, it turns out January 31st is the end of your fiscal year. Hard to get, it's like, make the quarter. So there's very strong indication. So those 2 zones, they march to different drummers. And if the performance zone takes over and sort of subordinates the productivity zone, you get Uber. You get this incredible performance that actually blows up because you didn't do correctly by the productivity zone responsibilities. On the other hand, if the productivity zone takes over and there's no performance, I don't want to name the companies because there are too many of them, but they're companies that basically are kind of going, they're kind of losing altitude at about 100 feet per month, and eventually they will crash over some amount of time, and they're not going to regain altitude ever. So what you want is this dynamic tension between the 2 of them. Then you say, okay, well that's great for the core business, But what about the disruptive side? And so for Horizon 3, you say, look, we need an incubation zone where we play by VC operating model rules. We don't fund annually. We don't ask you about your EBITDA. We don't look at expense to bookings ratios. We don't do any of the stuff you do in the performance zone. By the way, we don't try to fill out the annual plan and the employee satisfaction survey. It's like, just get something out there and figure something out. Product market fit, minimum viable product, be agile, blah, blah, blah. Fail fast, whatever you got to do, get it done here, right? Now, by the way, as Dan was saying, that's all where all the cool kids are right now, right? So people come to this valley thinking they need to learn how to do this and that will make them successful. It's like, careful. Fail fast in the incubation zone, you win. Fail fast in the performance zone, you get fired, right? Fail fast in the productivity zone, you might have to go to jail, right? I mean, so the point is, right? I mean, it's really, it's like, oh yeah, that was a small bribe, but it got started the fire. It's like, no. So the point is, all three of those zones have different playbooks. And by the way, if you don't do the fourth zone, although they all kind of squabble with each other, they kind of get along. You can actually run your company with those three zones for quite a long time, as long as you don't take on Horizon 2. Each zone, by the way, feels slightly superior to the other two. So if you're in the incubation zone, you're pretty sure you have between 20 and 25 IQ points on virtually everybody else in the company. You're just smarter. I mean, God made you smarter. You're just smarter, right? That's why you have the future. That's why you're doing the important stuff. If you're in the performance zone, it doesn't take you long to say, we're paying for all this. I mean, and then the productivity zone, people are going, are we like the only adults in the room? I mean, it's like, okay. But the point is, you can kind of sort of make it work until you do this. And now all of a sudden you say, we need to take the new business to scale. That's what's weird about the Northwest. In other words, it's disruptive, but you're taking it to scale, which is this is the J curve. This is the J curve quadrant, okay? And you don't have venture capital. So where are you going to get the money? Well, you're going to have to take it away from the other three zones. It's like, okay. And so this is not a moment for democracy because people will eventually negotiate a little bit of a sacrifice, but this is not a little sacrifice. This is a draconian sacrifice. This is Bezos saying, we're going to put a boatload of money into web services, or you're Reed Hastings, and you're saying we have this incredible DVD business which we're going to cannibalize with streaming, right? Okay, but over my dead body, said some people, and there were dead bodies because that's how you do it. But the way this works is if you look at the kind of cultures you look, again, you can see this isn't the same 4 playbook thing that we had with the life cycle, but you got it. I mean, I only have like 1 or 2 ideas in my whole head. Different playbooks in different zones. Again, same idea, okay? So you look at that and you say, okay, so how does that sort out? Well, if you're a product manager, how many times have you heard on time, on spec, and on budget, which 2 do you want, right? I mean, that's sort of one, okay? What's interesting when you look at these zones is each zone has a legitimate case for a different priority stack. So if you look at the Horizon 1 businesses, you have to make the number in Horizon 1. Horizon 1 is about making the number. That's why on budget is absolutely essential. On budget for the performance zone means make your forecast, and on budget for the productivity zone means make your expense forecast, right? Make your revenue forecast, make your expense forecast. But notice how in the performance zone, time takes priority over spec, because I've got to make my revenue thing by the end of the quarter, okay? I mean, the performance zone is a game played with time limits, right? There is a and that's the end of the quarter. So that's why the spec is, it's sort of in the product. I mean, it's in the next release, I think. Yeah. So, yeah. Promise them anything, ship them arpege. I mean, the point is, and you're thinking fast, and you're kind of on your feet, and you're doing everything you can to just close the damn deal, right? In the productivity zone, it's like, no. On spec, do it right, follow the process. you know, and if it takes longer, well, you know, we'll delay it a quarter or two. Anything from IT, you know, it's coming, right? Okay, so so there's this sense, so it's think slow. Do you know this book? There's a guy, Daniel Kahneman, called Thinking Fast and Slow. That's what that's about. And you want both, yeah, system one, system two. But you need both. And system one is this sort of reaction, kind of go, and system two is no analytical and procedural. We were talking about market research as a product manager. You know, I mean, so a part of it is like, no, minimum, just get out there and, you know, go ugly early, as Mark Andreessen used to say. That's a think fast play. And then it's like, no, do proper market research and then make a bet. That's the think slow play. Okay? And again, it's a different place. Then the incubation zone says, and by the way, look at the transformation zone, the incubation zone. Budget is, in both of them, is the third priority. Now in the incubation zone, that's right because there's not enough money to optimize, right? It's not, the money you would save in the incubation zone wouldn't show up anyplace else, right? Because it's mouse nuts, right? So you say, okay, no, but what you do care about in the incubation zone is creating something amazing, 10x effect, that's what the spec is. Do something amazing and do it as fast as you can. Don't do a 5-year research project, okay? Now, get something going now. So that's the incubation zone play. So you can sort of see that playbook is completely out of sync with either ones of the ones on the right. The performance zone just is going, these people are way too hard to deal with, their products don't work, they're going to ruin our brand, you know, don't make me sell this product, blah, blah, blah. And the productivity zone people are saying, these people violate every one of our employee policies, right? It's like they're not on brand, they want to hire somebody to give them a $250,000 signing bonus. You know, our vice presidents don't make that kind of money. Well, they're not data scientists, these guys, you know. So the point is the people in the incubation zone they want to think different, okay? And then the transformation zone is, more than anything else, what a transformation zone does is it takes resources out of a very predictable business, which is very profitable, and it pours them into an unpredictable business, which is unprofitable. So you're doing it for a reason. We are creating the next generation opportunity for our corporation. It is a life-threatening bet. So the number one thing about transformation is make it happen as fast as you possibly can. And what I mean by that normally is at the end of 6 quarters, you better be coming up on your J-curve. Because the world will give you 1 year to be brilliant or risky or whatever because, oh, you're bold management. Bold is not the word they use in the second year, okay? Idiot is the word that they use in the second year. And if by the 6th quarter you're not coming up, because you really get, at the end of the second year, if you're still going down at the end of the 8th quarter, you're out. It's like, you don't get a third. You don't get a third. Because the public markets can't let you do that. They just can't. And you'll get activist investors and you'll get all kinds of crap going on. So you've got to get through this thing. Now it turns out, what would it take to get to material size? It turns out 10% of your total enterprise revenue is sort of the bar of completion. Meaning, once a business becomes 10% of your total revenue, you can actually put it into the performance zone, and everybody's kind of, you know, the people want to sell it, and the investors are happy you're in it, and all is good. But when it's 5% of your total revenue, and losing money and burning cash like a bonfire, it is a toxic hazard. And so getting out of that state as fast as you can is the whole game. So when you look at the playbook for that one, this is the command and control playbook. The people that have traditionally done well there are founders who've had an enormous amount of power. I'm Jeff Bezos and you're not. I'm Elon Musk and you're not. You know, I'm Larry Ellison. You know, I'm Brian. Chesky. Thank you. I'm Brian at Airbnb. I'm Travis, who, by the way, lost it in the productivity zone, right? But he didn't lose it. He didn't lose it in the transformation zone. He drove the transformation. He drove it off a cliff. But he created the category. I mean, he created the category. It was just an amazing accomplishment going forward. Okay, so I get the point about this exercise then is if we have the zone model, when we're making decisions, we say, look, you know, and each of these has a slightly different culture. When we're looking at that, each zone has to respect, first of all, zone your business. Well, this is what I spend much of my time with executive teams. Zone your business. figure out what initiatives, what product lines, what orgs are in what zones. Then, and by the way, make it clear to people what zone they're in, and you're only in one zone. Okay? If you have a situation where you say, well, no, Geoffrey, I'm actually in 2 zones, you got to split your org. You can't ask a single org to bounce between 2 zones. You have to have sub-zone. But you zone your org, and then play by the playbook of that zone, honor the other 3 playbooks. So collaborate across those bars, but do not try to impose your metrics on another zone, and do not let another zone impose their metrics on you. So where this counts for everybody in here, if you have a product in the incubation zone, you cannot let your organization measure it by revenue, EBITDA, you just can't. Now, by the way, let me be clear about revenue. Because venture capitalists care a ton about revenue in a startup, but not for the reasons that CFOs do. They're not, the revenue is de minimis. The issue is, does the revenue indicate that you're increasing your power in the marketplace? So revenue is an indication that you're winning. So what VCs care about is power, not performance. The power ultimately will be translated at scale into amazing performance. But during the incubation and even the transformation, you're building power, build power, build power, build power, crash with power. Now perform like hell, okay? And go forward. The problem with established enterprises is, you got powerful in the past, and for the last 10, I had the conversation with the Microsoft executive team. And this was in 2014, and Satya was invited me to talk to the team. I said, look guys, you're this amazingly powerful company. You have this performance culture. You've had a performance culture ever since I've ever met you. You've been powerful ever since you were born. IBM gifted you with power, and then you guys you're just incredibly powerful in the 90s. You've lost power every year of this century. It's 2014. Every year of this century, from 2000 on, you were less powerful the following year than you were the year before, because you've been consuming your power with performance metrics. Now they were about to change that, and this is the great surprise. They did. The Azure Play, they ran the Azure Play, and they got Office to the Office 365, and they're back in a performance culture. But they had to go through. They had to do the power stuff. So each of those zones has their own book, and so again, you don't get to rezone your enterprise. That's a higher level responsibility, but you do get to advocate for your product, and maybe your product's in the performance zone, in which case it needs those metrics, right? But what you don't want to do is have the wrong metrics. Okay, so that was the frameworks for external and internal, and now I think maybe it's time to do fireside chat. So I'm going to invite Dan to come back up. Thank you very much.